All right, buckle up, because this deep dive is going to take us straight into the heart of a maximum security prison.
A maximum security prison that just happens to be the whole island of Manhattan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
John Carpenter's Escape from New York, 1981, a cult classic.
Yeah, cult classic. And we're going deep into the IMDb reviews.
To figure out why this dystopian future, this vision of 1997, still grabs people all these years later.
You know, what always gets me is how the film just throws you right into this world. No explanations, just bam. Manhattan's a prison.
No guards inside, just the prisoners running the show. It's a total free-for-all.
Chaotic. Total chaos. You feel as lost as Snake Plissken himself when he first gets dropped in there.
Oh, speaking of Snake, our eye patch wearing antihero. He's got to rescue the president who crash-landed right smack in the middle of this prison city.
And he's got a ticking time bomb implanted in him. Talk about motivation, right?
A presidential pardon's the carrot they're dangling. Pure Carpenter. That blend of high stakes and dark humor.
Yeah, that's Carpenter for you. But what I find really interesting is how the reviews wrestle with Snake's character. He's a criminal, but
we're rooting for the whole time.
yeah, he's the one we're rooting for. It's that contradiction that makes him so darn interesting.
He's gruff, cynical, ex-soldier.
But then you have Kurt Russell.
Yeah.
He brings this charisma to Snake, you know?
Like, you can't help but like the guy.
And the reviews really pick up on that, how Russell uses his voice, that gravelly voice, and the way he delivers those lines. Very few words, but man, they pack a punch.
Yeah, less is more with Snake. He's got that man with no name vibe going on.
Oh, totally. Like Clint Eastwood, that classic anti-hero.
But we can't talk about Escape from New York without talking about the music, that John Carpenter score.
Those synths, so cool, so distinct, instantly sets the mood.
It's like the music itself is a character in the film. It's so creepy and effective.
Oh, it's totally effective. You think about that opening theme, those pulsing synths, it's like, danger's right around the corner.
It's got that same kind of vibe as his score for Halloween.
Yeah, very similar. It's minimalist, but man, does it build suspense. Just a few instruments, but so powerful.
It's interesting you bring up Halloween because both films were made on a shoestring budget.
Yeah, really low budget. But they made it work.
And a lot of the reviews point that out, how they had to get creative.
Yeah.
And I think it adds to the grittiness,
Absolutely. I mean, they use St. Louis and Los Angeles to stand in for New York City.
And it works. You totally buy it.
Totally. Sometimes limitations can actually make things better, more authentic.
I read somewhere that there was a deleted opening scene, Snake robbing a bank, getting caught. It was cut from the final film.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that.
It makes you wonder, what if they'd kept it in? Would it have changed how we see Snake?
It's a great question. On the one hand, seeing him in action, pulling off this heist, might have made him more relatable. We'd understand him better, maybe even sympathize with him.
Yeah, see his motivations.
But then again, part of Snake's appeal is the mystery. We don't know his whole story, and that makes him even more intriguing.
And the reviews are full of theories. People trying to piece together his past. Why the eye patch? What's he done? It's like a puzzle.
Exactly. It keeps you thinking, keeps you coming back for more. It's part of what makes the film so rewatchable.
Plus, it really plays into that distrust of authority that's all over the film and the time it was made.
The early 80s, we see it everywhere. The rundown city, the economic collapse, that feeling like everything's falling apart.
It's a product of its time, for sure. Cold War paranoia, post-Watergate cynicism.
You can practically feel the distrust in the air. Nobody trusts anyone. The government, the prisoners, even the characters inside the prison. It's like a powder keg.
And it's interesting because that distrust, that anxiety about the future, it still resonates today, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's like Escape from New York tapped into something fundamental about human nature, about how we respond to uncertainty and fear. Maybe that's why it still feels so relevant, even decades later.
I keep thinking about how Escape from New York takes these fears from the early 80s and makes them into this story that still works today.
It's really something, right? Like how it takes that Cold War fear, the cities falling apart, the economy tanking, and turns it all into, this fight for survival.
Yeah, it's not just about the big stuff either. The details are what get me.
What do you mean?
Well, think about all the surveillance in the film. Snake can't go anywhere without being watched.
Oh, yeah, he's constantly being tracked, manipulated.
And isn't that kind of like our world now? Cameras everywhere, facial recognition, all that data tracking.
It's true. Big Brother is watching, but it's not just the government anymore, right? It's corporations, too.
Yeah, exactly. And Carpenter really knew how to use that surveillance to make you sweat.
Oh, totally. Remember that scene where Snake's under the city in those mines? You know they're watching him. Every move.
Oh, man. Yeah, those red dots following on those screens gave me the chills.
Talk about claustrophobic.
But okay, let's talk about the characters for a second, because part of what makes this film so great is how over-the-top everyone is.
Oh, yeah. Each one is so memorable. Like they came straight out of a comic book.
But they also feel real, you know?
Totally. I mean, take the Duke of New York. He runs the whole prison city, right? Total crime lord.
And casting Isaac Hayes, brilliant. He just owns that role.
You totally believe he could lead an army of criminals, right? He's got that presence.
It's a blend of charm and terror all at once. And then there's that scene where he's performing on stage with his gang as the backup band.
Oh, that's a classic. Like some messed up rock concert with the Duke as the star.
And that's Carpenter, right? He throws in those little details that you don't expect. He's always mixing things up.
Exactly. He's not afraid to experiment, to take risks. It's why Escape from New York is more than just your typical action flick.
Yeah, it makes you think about power, about authority, about what it means to be free.
Big questions. But it doesn't forget to be fun, too, right?
Oh, for sure. All those action scenes, that gritty, almost punk rock feel.
Yeah, it's not about fancy weapons or gadgets. It's about survival.
Like that scene where Snake takes out a guard with a garbage can lid.
Oh, man. So brutal, but also so smart.
Right. He uses what he's got, he's resourceful, and that's what makes him such a great character. He's the underdog fighting against impossible odds.
And that's something we can all relate to, right? I mean, who hasn't felt like they were up against it at some point?
Totally. But there's also this element of community in the film, right? Even though it's about this lone wolf.
No, yeah, those characters who help him along the way. Cabby, Brain, Maggie.
They're all outcasts in their own way.
Yeah, but they band together to get things done. And it's a good reminder, right, that we're stronger together.
Absolutely. And even in this crazy dystopia, there's still hope. People are still willing to help each other out.
It's like no matter how bad things get, there's always that flicker of human connection.
Okay, but going back to Snake, we've talked about him being this anti-hero, this cynic.
Yeah, but you know, I think there's a moral compass in there somewhere.
Really? You think so?
Yeah, you see hints of it throughout the film. It's not just about him saving his own skin. He's got a sense of justice.
It's not always obvious, I'll give you that.
No, it's subtle, but it's there. And that's what makes him so complex, right? He's not just good or bad.
Yeah, he's a mix of both.
A product of his environment, but that little spark of good, that's what makes him a hero in his own way.
It's why people love him. And it's why Escape from New York has had such a big impact. You know, it's not just the action, it's the ideas, the characters, they stick with you.
Oh, absolutely. It's a film that gets under your skin, makes you think about the world, about yourself.
And I think that's why we're still talking about it all these years later.
Totally. It's not just a movie. It's an experience.
So we've covered a lot of ground, the dystopia, the characters, how it all connects to today.
We have, but there's still that one question we haven't really answered.
What would Snake Plissken do in our world, right?
Yeah, if we dropped him into 2023, what kind of escape would he be on?
It's a big question, and I think it deserves its own deep dive. So last time we left off with this big question. What would Snake Plissken do if he was suddenly in our world today?
It really is fascinating to think about. You know, if we took everything we know about Snake, his skills, his attitude, and dropped him right here, right now, what would his mission be?
Right, because it's not like the world of the film anymore. It's 2023, not 1997, not even 1981 when it came out. We're talking about a whole different landscape.
Oh, yeah. The things that Carpenter imagined back then, they were futuristic anxieties.
Yeah.
But today, a lot of that stuff is just, well, everyday life.
Think about it. Constant surveillance, people worried about data breaches, all this talk about information warfare.
Exactly, like Carpenter was looking into a crystal ball or something.
And remember, Snake was all about stealth and using these kind of low-tech gadgets. But today...
Facial recognition everywhere, drones, algorithms that could track his every move.
It'd be a whole new ballgame for him.
Totally. I mean, think about it. In the film, he was fighting against something very concrete, you know, a government, a crime lord. But today, it's more like...
It's more shadowy, right? Like, who's the enemy? Some giant corporation controlling all our data.
Exactly. Manipulating us without us even realizing it.
So maybe his mission wouldn't be to rescue a person. Maybe it would be to, I don't know, break into some tech giant's HQ.
Ooh, I like that. And expose all their secrets, right? Show how they're pulling the strings.
Free us from this digital prison that we don't even know we're in.
It wouldn't be a physical time bomb this time either. It'd be some digital doomsday device. You know, if he fails, the whole system crashes.
I got pressure.
No kidding. And forget about those physical mazes in the prison city. He'd be navigating firewalls, dodging virtual traps.
This would be a whole new level of escape, like a digital jailbreak or something.
Yeah, I love that. A digital jailbreak. And the characters he'd encounter. Forget about street gangs. Now he's dealing with hackers, shadowy figures online.
Maybe even some rogue AI.
Right. It'd be a soberpunk version of the original.
And you can picture him, right? Still got the eye patch, but now it's hooked up to some high-tech display.
Navigating this world of data streams, virtual reality.
Oh, man, I'd watch that movie.
Me too. But no matter how much the world changes, the core of his mission would probably be the same.
It's still about freedom, standing up to the people in control.
Exactly. Just the battlefield's different. It's moved online.
It does make you think, though. Would Snake even be able to handle all this technology?
He was such a master of those old school skills, intuition, you know, thinking on his feet.
Would he adapt? Learn to use the tech to his advantage? Or would he stick to what he knows?
That's the question, isn't it? Could he hack the system, or would he have to find a way around it?
And another thing, Snake was a loner, didn't trust anyone. But our world today, everyone's connected, sharing everything online.
Yeah, how would he handle that? A guy like him thrown into this world of social media, influencers, all that noise.
It'd be a culture shock for sure. Maybe he'd just disappear into the anonymity of the internet, you know, become some kind of digital ghost.
Ooh, I like that. Fighting for freedom in the shadows of the web.
Or maybe he'd just completely reject it all, you know, go off the grid completely. Long for the simpler times.
Two very different paths, but both very Snake.
And I think that's what makes this whole discussion so interesting, you know. It makes you see those fears that Carpenter was exploring in the film in a whole new light.
It's like, we haven't escaped from New York. We've just built a different kind of prison.
A digital one.
Yeah.
And that's why this movie, all these years later, it still feels important.
It's a warning. It's entertainment, sure, but it's also making us think about where we're headed, what we're giving up.
And that's the whole point of these deep dives, isn't it? To go beyond just the surface.
Yeah, to really dig into these films, what they mean, why they matter.
And to connect them to our own lives, to the world around us.
Because great art, it does that. It transcends time. It sparks these conversations.
And Escape from New York, it definitely does that. So I want to thank you for joining us on this journey, exploring this film, this idea of escape.
It's been a blast.
And who knows, maybe Snake Plissken is out there right now, somewhere in the digital world, fighting the good fight.
I like to think so.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for listening, and keep those thought-provoking questions coming. See you next time.